Imagine being a 9-year-old girl, walking the same quiet neighborhood path every day with your loyal dog, thinking the world is simple, peaceful, and safe. Now imagine that same path turning into something far more dangerous, with a threat you never saw coming. This is the story of Ava, a bright and curious young girl, and her dog, Shadow, a retired military K-9 with a past that refuses to stay buried. When an ordinary walk turns into a terrifying encounter, the truth about Shadow's history and Ava's mother's hidden life begins to unravel. If you love stories filled with suspense, emotional twists, and powerful bonds that defy the odds, stay with us. You won't want to miss what happens when the line between protector and soldier blurs in the most unexpected way. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss an inspiring and thrilling story from Hope Haven. And tell us in the comments, where are you listening from today? The early afternoon sun cast a warm glow across the quiet suburban neighborhood of Pine Grove, where the sidewalks were clean, the hedges trimmed, and the mailboxes painted in neat little rows. It was the kind of place where everyone waved, barbecues were planned weeks in advance, and gossip traveled faster than the postal service. Down Maple Lane, a little girl with honey blonde curls bounced along the sidewalk, clutching a red leash. Her name was Ava Hart. 9 years old, full of questions and imagination, and the kind of child who saw shapes in clouds and gave them personalities. She wore a faded denim jacket over a polka dot dress, and her rain boots, scuffed and covered in cartoon stickers, made a soft thump with every step. At the other end of the leash was Shadow. He was no ordinary dog, a massive German shepherd with a lean, muscular frame, ears like antennae, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He moved like a shadow, silent and calculated. His coat was mostly black, except for a streak of silver that ran from the top of his head to his snout. And when he walked, it wasn't the excited prance of a typical pet. It was steady, purposeful, always scanning. To most of Pine Grove, Shadow was the dog that made them cross the street. But to Ava, he was her best friend. Every day at 3:45 p.m., like clockwork, Ava walked Shadow around the neighborhood. They passed by Mr. Langley's bakery, where Ava would get a free mini scone, and old Mrs. Dobbs, who always handed her a butterscotch candy with a wink. But not everyone was thrilled by the duo. Mrs. Carrow from 3 houses down would pull her chihuahua close and whisper about that beast as Ava passed. A few kids from school would peek from behind curtains, more curious than afraid. Ava didn't mind. She was used to people not understanding Shadow. She didn't know all the details, not yet. But her mother, Elise, had told her enough. Shadow had once served in the military, a special K-9 unit known as 6X. He'd saved lives, sniffed out danger, and been part of missions she wasn't allowed to talk about. Then, after something went wrong overseas, Shadow had been retired, emotionally damaged, highly trained, and too dangerous to be adopted by just anyone. But Elise wasn't just anyone. She had spent 10 years in military intelligence before transitioning into a quieter life as a civilian analyst. When she heard about Shadow being up for retirement, she pulled strings, filled out papers, and eventually brought him home. "He needs peace," she told Ava, "and you're going to be his peace." Ava took that job very seriously, but Shadow wasn't just healing. He was watching, always watching. On this particular Tuesday, the sky was streaked with soft lavender clouds, and the air smelled faintly of lilacs. Ava and Shadow passed the neighborhood park, the swing sets creaking in the wind, the sandbox empty, except for a few forgotten plastic shovels. Shadow suddenly stopped. Ava, still humming a made-up tune, tugged the leash lightly. "Come on, buddy." But Shadow's body had gone rigid, his ears perked, his nose lifted. Then, a low growl, not loud, not vicious, but unmistakable. It rumbled from his chest like distant thunder. Ava followed his gaze to a cluster of bushes near the edge of the trail. Nothing there, just branches swaying. She frowned. "Squirrel?" Shadow didn't move. Okay, she said softly, patting his head. "Let's go." Reluctantly, Shadow obeyed, casting one last look at the bushes. Hidden behind them, crouched in a way that disturbed the foliage just enough to matter, was a man. His name was Cole Rennick, late 30s, weathered skin. a face that might have been handsome once before time, and hard choices took their toll. He wore a dark hoodie, jeans, and carried a worn leather satchel. He'd been watching Ava for weeks now, learning her routine. Every day, same time, same path. The perfect pattern, the perfect opportunity. Or so he thought. He'd seen Shadow, of course, but he saw only a dog, not what Shadow was. Cole licked his chapped lips and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow." Wednesday arrived with gray clouds hanging low like a warning. The air felt heavier than usual, and a breeze carried the promise of rain. Ava didn't mind. She liked the way the wind played with her curls, and how Shadow seemed more energetic in colder weather. She grabbed her red leash and called, "Shadow, walk time!" The dog padded over immediately, tail still, eyes focused. Elise poked her head out from the kitchen. "Stay on the trail," she warned gently. "Storm's coming." "Got it," Ava chirped, already halfway out the door. The world felt quieter than usual. The neighborhood seemed to be holding its breath. Even the birds were absent. As they neared the park trail, Ava's favorite part, Shadow's steps slowed. Again, the rigid stance. Ears up, nose twitching. Ava looked around. Empty trail. Empty swings. "Shadow, it's just the wind." But it wasn't. Cole stepped out from behind a large oak tree, hands raised casually. "Hey there," he said with a half smile. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." Ava froze. Shadow growled. Cole stepped closer. I'm new to the area. Got turned around looking for Oak Drive. Could you help me?" Ava's instincts screamed. Something was off. I don't know," she said, taking a step back. Cole's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Ava. "It's just a street. Come on, be a good kid." He reached out suddenly, not aggressively at first, but quickly enough. Ava jerked away, but Cole grabbed her wrist. "Just help me for a second." And that was all Shadow needed. In a flash of fur and fury, the German shepherd lunged. He clamped down on Cole's arm, twisting his entire body with calculated force. The man screamed, stumbling backward as Shadow dragged him down, pinning him beneath 80 pounds of trained muscle. Shadow didn't rip. He didn't maul. He detained, just like he was trained to. Cole writhed. "Get him off me! I know that dog!" he yelled, face contorted in pain and recognition. Ava, wide-eyed and shaking, dropped to her knees beside Shadow. "Shadow, release!" The dog obeyed, reluctantly. Cole gasped, clutching his arm, now bloodied but not mangled. That dog. He was 6X. I know him. He passed out. Ava's scream echoed through the neighborhood. Within minutes, a neighbor who had been trimming hedges sprinted over, phone in hand. "I called the police." By the time the squad car rolled in, Cole was unconscious on the ground, Shadow sitting alert beside Ava, not letting anyone close. One of the officers, Officer Diaz, approached carefully. "It's okay," he said gently. "You did good, sweetheart." Then his eyes landed on Shadow's collar, a small insignia nearly hidden in the leather. He blinked. No way. Another officer, curious, leaned in. "What is it?" Diaz's voice lowered. "Unit 6X. That's a ghost unit. Classified. Disbanded after that operation in Kabul." He looked from Shadow to Ava. "This dog wasn't just trained," he whispered. "He's a soldier." And the man on the ground? He wasn't a stranger, not even close. He was part of something darker. The sterile light of the interrogation room buzzed softly above Cole, casting long shadows over his bruised face. His left arm was bandaged, the bite marks from Shadow already beginning to swell with angry purple bruises. Across the table, Detective Rivas leaned forward, elbows planted firmly as he scanned the man with a mix of curiosity and quiet fury. "You want to tell me why a retired military K-9 responded to you like you were on a terrorist watch list?" Rivas asked, voice steady but firm. Cole snorted, a dark chuckle escaping from between cracked lips. "That dog shouldn't even be here. He should have been put down after what happened overseas." Rivas narrowed his eyes. "You knew him, didn't you?" Cole looked up slowly, defiant. "Yeah," he muttered. "I knew him. We were part of the same unit. I didn't think I'd ever see that ghost again." Back at the house, Ava sat curled up on the couch, Shadow resting beside her like a statue, his thick head on her lap. His eyes never closed, only flickered toward every sound, every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator. He was listening, always. In the kitchen, Ava's mom, Rachel Bennett, stood over the sink with shaking hands. The tea kettle whistled, but she didn't move. She stared through the window, out at the trees where just days ago, danger had nearly touched her daughter. She turned and walked into the living room. "Ava," she said softly. The girl looked up. Rachel sat beside her, pushing a strand of curly hair behind Ava's ear. "There's something I need to tell you." Ava blinked, confused. "About Shadow?" Rachel nodded. "And me." They talked for over an hour. Rachel explained how, years ago, she'd been part of a military intelligence division focused on uncovering internal corruption. That's how she met Shadow. He belonged to her unit's lead handler, Sergeant Dean Harrow. Shadow had saved lives on more than one mission, his instincts sharper than most humans. But everything changed on one mission, deep in enemy territory. There had been an ambush. Rachel was the one who discovered that someone had leaked their position. "It was Cole," Rachel said. "He sold us out, tried to steal classified data and pin it on someone else. Dean died that day trying to protect us, and Shadow wouldn't leave his side." Ava's lip trembled. She looked down at Shadow, who stared ahead, unmoving. "They tried to retire him permanently," Rachel whispered. "But I pulled strings. I made sure he got to live. I owed that much to Dean, and to Shadow." Ava hugged the dog tightly. Shadow didn't react, but his tail gave a single, slow wag. Meanwhile, back at the precinct, Rivas hung up the phone and stormed back into the interrogation room. "You weren't just watching the girl, were you? You were after Rachel Bennett." Cole smirked. "She thought burying the truth would keep her safe. But some of us remember, and we don't forget. You're not working alone." Cole said nothing. Rivas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The files you tried to steal, what was in them?" Cole chuckled. "A list of people who knew too much. Rachel was just the beginning." Across town, Rachel stared at the encrypted folder now open on her old military laptop. The names, she recognized several, former operatives, tech officers, one man who had mysteriously vanished after testifying in court. She bit her lip. Shadow stood, ears twitching. Rachel looked up. "They're coming, aren't they?" Ava whispered. Rachel met her daughter's eyes, and for the first time, she didn't lie. "Yes." The next morning, the town woke up to headlines. "Hero Dog Saves Girl from Attack." A blurry photo taken by a neighbor had gone viral. Shadow, teeth bared, pinning a man to the ground while Ava stood behind him, wide-eyed. By noon, a small crowd had gathered outside their home. Reporters, curious onlookers. Even a few neighbors who used to cross the street when Ava and Shadow walked by now brought flowers and homemade dog treats. Rachel stood on the porch, arms crossed. Ava waved politely to classmates who came to see her. "You okay, sweetheart?" one of the mothers asked. Ava nodded. "Shadow kept me safe. He always does." Inside the house, Rachel was setting up reinforced locks and cameras. She'd already spoken to two former colleagues. One now ran a private cybersecurity firm. The other was in the U.S. Marshals Service. They both confirmed her worst fear. The network Cole belonged to hadn't been dismantled. It had gone underground. Shadow sat by the window, eyes scanning the street. Later that night, a black SUV pulled up behind the precinct. Cole, now in cuffs and shackled, was escorted to the transport vehicle. Just as the rear doors opened, a man in a dark coat stepped from the shadows. "Warden says you get 5 minutes," the guard grunted. The man stepped into the back of the van and sat across from Cole. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a cap, but his voice was clear. "Did the dog recognize you?" Cole's jaw tightened. Worse, he remembered everything. The man leaned forward. "That complicates things." Cole smiled. "He won't stop. He knows what we did. He saw it all." The man stood, turning to leave. "Then we make sure he doesn't see anything else." Back at the Bennett home, Ava was finally asleep, her breathing slow, peaceful. The window cracked slightly to let in the breeze. Moonlight spilled across her comforter, casting silvery lines over the plush animals on her bed. Shadow lay at her door, still, alert, ears twitching at the softest sound, his breathing shallow, controlled. A distant car door slammed. His eyes opened. Downstairs, Rachel stood at the kitchen counter, holding a cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed, a secure text from her contact. Cole was visited tonight. We believe someone high up is involved. Be ready. She looked at the stairs, then at the photo of Dean Harrow in uniform, standing beside Shadow, years younger, his coat darker, his stance proud. Outside, the trees rustled in the wind. Shadow stood. In the night stillness, he moved toward the front door. He paused, nose lifted, drawing in a scent carried on the wind. Familiar, foul, dangerous. Rachel stepped into the hallway, whispering, "What is it, boy?" Shadow growled, a low, barely audible vibration in his chest. She reached for the shotgun mounted above the closet. In Ava's room, the breeze grew colder. She turned in her sleep, unaware. But she was never alone. Shadow returned to her door, sat down, and waited. There was no fear in his eyes, only focus. The mission wasn't over. It had never been over. Closing line. At the federal holding facility, the visitor stepped out of the van and lit a cigarette. He glanced toward the stars, exhaling smoke into the crisp night air. "You messed with the wrong little girl," he muttered, flicking ash to the ground. A pause, a smirk, and the wrong dog. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of courage, loyalty, and the bond between a girl and her guardian. Ava and Shadow's story reminds us that heroes come in all forms, even with 4 legs and a haunted past. If this story touched you, don't forget to comment below and let us know where you're listening from. And if you found it meaningful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another powerful story from Hope Haven. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay strong, and always protect what matters most.